Hey folks, Seth here. As we watch cities burn, statues being torn down, and calls to defund the police, if you haven't already, it may be time to think about personal protection. Guns Etc. has 10,200 square feet of guns, ammo, safes, and a staff that will work with you to find the best firearm for your situation. So stop by their huge store in Mesa or click on gunsetcetera.com and have access to over $400 million in firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back. Happy August 26, 2020. A week ago today, the morning after Joe Biden spoke to the Democratic Convention, the Arizona Republic headline was, quote, Biden gets boost at convention, close quote, with a picture of Jill Biden and Joe Biden. This morning's headline, the night after Melania Trump spoke to the convention, the night after Donald Trump performed a swearing-in ceremony for new immigrants, the Arizona Republic headline was, quote, Arizona woman booted as speaker for GOP, close quote. I guess it was our paper's effort to show there's a nativist or someone who sent an anti-Semitic tweet who wants to affiliate or affiliates with the GOP. What was lost was what I spoke of yesterday. Yup. And when the GOP learned of it, they canceled her appearance. They separated themselves from her, and clearly, contrarily, the Democratic Party featured at their convention a man credibly accused of rape, and also Linda Sarsour, who was booted out of the Women's March, which she founded, based on her anti-Semitism. But no headline reading, DNC features controversial anti-Semite. Of course not. And no headline that the white nationalist Richard Spencer, who organized the famous Charlottesville March that was so fraught with anti-Semitism, Joe Biden said the response to it was the deciding factor in his running for president. No story on Richard Spencer, the fons et origio of all that hate, endorsing Joe Biden. And, of course, no headline on the First Lady's speech last night. There is a story flying around about Melania's speech. It's a tweet series from Bette Midler last night, writing that Melania is an illegal alien. She's not. And that she still can't speak English. She can. That Melania is fluent in 5 languages is irrelevant, I suppose. Midler was attacking her accent, as they will attack any woman or immigrant or person of color who dares to affiliate with our party. Spare me any notion that the Democrats are the party of tolerance, unless it's tolerance for bigotry. Spare me any notion that the media is anything but an instrument of the Democratic Party, too. I've called this voter suppression, saying that for all the absurd claims of voter suppression supposedly carried out by Republicans, the real voter suppression is the media's continuous and unremitting attacks on Republicans and Trump supporters, always burying intolerance and bigotry on the left, always spinning a story to make Republicans look troglodytic. And almost every time, the story breaks down of its own weight. We have someone who wants to affiliate with us with bigotry. We oust them. They have a rash of someones who traffic in bigotry and sexism, if not criminal assault, wants to affiliate with them. They give in. They give them speaking roles at their convention. You'd never know that from reading the headlines, though. I wonder, digging psychologically a bit, if the reason for all the shamelessness over this is a deep down or buried thought that, you know, we Democrats are the good guys. The hate and sexism in our party doesn't mean much because it's not what defines us. What defines us is all the good our policies will do and all the bad the GOP policies will do. I wonder if that's what they're thinking. But if so, a few things. Then, if it is true about policies, quit pointing out the moats in the GOP while ignoring the beams in your own party. But that is too much to ask, for moats can be weaponized for the purposes of policy victories, no? So what of this Democratic Party being the party of the good guys, the decent and the caring? Was it good, decent, and caring to create a welfare society that has sucked trillions of dollars out of the economy in order to cause generational subsistence on the government, attended by crime, waste, and alcohol and substance abuse? Was it good, decent, and caring to create a system that destroyed the first, best, and original Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, namely the Western Family Unit? Was it good, decent, and caring to ignore the rise of medieval philosophies and movements that attacked the United States and destroyed once beautiful countries like Lebanon, that resurrected human torture and slaughter on such a scale it could only be compared to the Dark Ages? Was it good, decent, and caring to support a tax system that made it harder on the employer class in the name of trying to make things easier for the employee class, which is logically and economically impossible unless, of course, you also increase and expand the duties of the welfare state? Was it good, decent, and caring to defend slavery and fight for its badges during the Jim Crow era? Is it good, decent, and caring to enact policies that victimize the innocent while defending the lawless in our criminal justice system? No. These above reasons and many others are why people affiliate with the conservative movement and the Republican Party, and none of it is ever cause for reflection by the journalist class. Did you see the speech last night by the Attorney General of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron? He is the reason I am a Republican, and for anyone on the fence about their political affiliations, or for journalists trying to understand why people like the Republican Party, I suggest they read his speech. He started his speech by tying his biography and geography to Abraham Lincoln, then said, quote, "Sadly, there are some who don't believe in this wisdom or in the better angels of our shared American history as they tear down the statues of people like Ulysses S. Grant, Frederick Douglass, and even Mr. Lincoln himself." What does the Democratic Party think of that, by the way? Well, we have a statement on record, don't we, from the leader of the Democratic Party, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Asked about the destruction of such statues, her response only last month was, quote, "People will do what people will do." I suppose that puts her right in league with Stephen A. Douglas, who, as a Democrat running against Abraham Lincoln, professed neutrality and indifference to the positions Lincoln, Douglas, and Grant went to war against. That legacy of the Democratic Party runs far deeper and longer than many think, but there it is. General Cameron continued. He touched on the trial of our times, saying, quote, "Republicans will never turn a blind eye to unjust acts, but neither will we accept this all-out assault on Western civilization," close quote. An all-out assault on Western civilization. Who speaks of this any more than a handful of political philosophers who have been worried about this since the advent of the modern conservative movement in the 1950s? What is the crisis of the West? A chaos of moral relativism and philosophic nihilism, as one professor put it. Good word, that, chaos. Leo Strauss put the crisis this way: the West has become uncertain of its purpose. An uncertain purpose leads to an uncertain future, and an uncertain future leads to despair and degradation, such as we have seen in the 20th century. A society cannot lose faith in its purpose without becoming completely confused. Close quote. Good word, that, confusion. William Buckley put it this way in his book Up From Liberalism, quote, "Ideological totalism can bring whole societies down, as it did Hitler's, and permanently terrorizes others, as communism has done." We may add radical Islam. The danger comes when a distrust of doctrinaire social systems eases over into a dissolute disregard for principle. Close quote. Good phrase, that, easing dissolution. For this is how we got here, isn't it? Piecemeal accommodations to piecemeal disregard for principles. In the courts, in our schools, in our corporations, in our entertainment, in our media. Mr. Cameron moved on to point out the first principles of civilization because he knows what George Orwell knew, that the first task of the intelligent these days is to restate the obvious. Cameron said it this way: "We all want the same things, quote, for our children to have more opportunities than we did, to feel the dignity of work, and to believe that if you play by the rules, you can make a good life for yourself and your family," close quote. But you know what occurs? Our easing dissolution of those virtues has brought us where we are. Dignity of work? That's not the welfare state. Play by the rules? We sure about that as we watch rioting and police evasions? Opportunity? Nope. The ethic of the day is outcome. Cameron made only one mistake here. We all used to want the same things, and it makes sense to very much want them again for all of us. Then he went in and said what we all wished someone would say. He said, quote, "I think often about my ancestors who struggled for freedom, And as I think of those giants and their broad shoulders, I also think about Joe Biden, who says if you aren't voting for me, you ain't black, who argued that Republicans would put us back in chains, who says there is no diversity of thought in the black community. Mr. Vice President, Cameron said, look at me. I am black. We are not all the same, sir. I am not in chains. My mind is my own, and you can't tell me how to vote because of the color of my skin. Close quote. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. There is not anyone with a fair mind who can argue that Biden is more enlightened than Trump on these issues, or that Biden thinks and orates less racist ideas than Donald Trump. But a fair mind is, of course, what is at discount in our media today, as I laid out above. Mr. Cameron went on, quote, and Biden is captive to the radical left, a movement committed to cancel culture and the destruction of public discourse. They believe your skin color must dictate your politics, and if you fail to conform while exercising your God-given right to speak and think freely, they will cut you down. The politics of identity, cancellation, and mob rule are not acceptable to me. Republicans trust you to think for yourselves and to pursue your American dream however you see fit, close quote. Note what's in that set of lines. Radicalism, a.k.a. Marxism, the curbing of free speech and the First Amendment, God. These are the building blocks and sheet anchors of the West. What was the sheet anchor to Abraham Lincoln? He put it this way, quote, no man is good enough to govern another man without that other's consent. That is the leading principle, the sheet anchor of American republicanism, close quote. But we live in a time, as Cameron noted, where political professions of faith and doctrine are now coerced and mob rule has been accommodated, either met with silence or encouraged, the opposite of government by consent. The first principle of our founding, which is also under attack from the left and Joe Biden's party, consent. It is indeed a perfect storm the left and Democratic Party has created, and thank you to Daniel Cameron for pointing it out. He exists as we exist because of the virtues of our founding and those very principles found in the Declaration of Independence. No small wonder, then, that those are the very things under attack today, as they want us and Mr. Cameron, quite simply, also not to exist. Harry Jaffa once wrote, quote, the American democratic experiment has been successful in many ways. Millions of people around the world look to the United States as a model in their search for freedom, dignity, and prosperity. But the continuing success of American democracy depends on the degree to which each new generation, native-born and immigrant, makes its own the moral truths on which the Founding Fathers stake the future of our republic. Close quote. Quite right. Protesters against communism march with American symbols and our national anthem in Hong Kong, as they did in Tiananmen Square, as others have done. Is it too much to ask the American left to see and do the same thing? It may be. It, after all, endows, supports, and encourages the very political organizations those protesters abroad are marching against. That, in sharp relief, is where we are. It was a crisis commencing in the 1950s. It's a deepening crisis now. Last night, President Trump highlighted this by swearing in as new citizens men and women from Bolivia, Lebanon, India, Ghana, and the Sudan. They worked hard to be here. It meant and means the world to them, quite literally, to be here. They get it. They get the American idea and ideal. Too bad the Democrats don't. I'm Seth. The lines are open.